My name is Harald Raaijmakers. I am from the Netherlands, but I am working in Sweden at Göteborg University. And I'm working there as a PhD student at the Institute for Didactics, and my specialty is biology didactics. Well, I met Dr. Klutzer last spring, where we were at a conference, Psychologie conference, where I was presenting a project on plants and our relationship to plants. That's my field of interest. And then she asked me to, if I could think about working together with her, mapping educational efforts of botanic gardens all over the world. And of course, I am very interested in that. And I said yes. So we had to look for if the finance would get around and we would get some financing for that. And a month ago, she called me and she said, well, now it's all been done, so we can come to Neuchâtel and we can start our project on education in botanic gardens. So that's why I'm here. We are working on a questionnaire right now, and the questionnaire has to map the different ways of botanic gardens and how they work with education and botany. Well, I'm interested in human relationships with plants, and then especially how we incorporate that in educational settings, all the way from primary school to higher education actually, but my primary focus will be on upper secondary and higher education. And part of my research will be to map educational efforts by botanic gardens, but by schools as well. And another part will be an analysis of a specific pedagogical tool that I use, which is called visual thinking strategies. I would like to use in botanic gardens to have group conversations with about plant life in different forms. Yeah, actually the strategy here I have been using since an earlier project. So before I started as a PhD at the Göteborg University, I did half a PhD, which is a possibility in Sweden, you can do it. And then I was installed as a museum educator at a museum for contemporary art. I got a scholarship during 3 years to develop a program where we used contemporary art to explore socio-scientific issues. Socio-scientific issue could be, for example, climate change, but also, for example, genetic engineering. Artists have their ideas about these scientific issues, and they have different ways of expressing their ideas through the medium of painting or sculptures, or any kind of artistic expression. And the interesting part for me there was, how could we use that, those science-based artworks, to actually explore the scientific issues behind them together with groups of school children. And that's where I heard about visual thinking strategies for the first time. It was developed during the 1980s at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, where they noticed that if people go around and look at artworks, usually they can't really remember what they have been looking at. And if they had a guided tour, they don't remember what the museum educator was actually telling about this artwork. So they had a hard time remembering what they have seen. The teaching didn't really stick. So they developed a new method. Cognitive psychologist Abigail Hausen developed this method. And it's very simple. She's actually asking but 3 questions about a piece of art. What's going on in this artwork? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more could we discover? And those 3 questions you can use as a teacher to actually moderate a conversation with the group you have in front of you. Yeah, from my time as a museum educator at Contemporary Art Museum, I have an interesting anecdote. I received a group of 10-year-old students, 10 years old. They were coming in and they were looking at a big picture of a sheep head. So a butchered sheep head just before roasting. And it's just this small part of the head, you can say. You see the eye and a little bit of the skin around it. And it's a really big portrait, a big piece of artwork. As soon as the students came in, it was a very homogenic group, so most of them were Swedish children, except for one Islamic boy who was there as well in the class, and they came in and the reactions were immediately very effective, like, oh God, no, this is a terrible painting, and what is it we see here? So I start the VTS conversation by asking what's going on in this picture, and they are all expressing how awful they think it is with the blood and the eye, and they also ask questions about what kind of animal is this we're looking at. It could be a fish. After 15 minutes, this Muslim boy raises his hand and he says, well, if I look at this picture, I get really warm feelings inside of this. It reminds me of my grandmother. And when we gather one time a year and do this, actually, we look for a park, we have a butchered sheep, and then we actually start to roast it and we celebrate it. We celebrate it like you celebrate Christmas. And for me, this is a very interesting moment because the exact same object that everybody's looking at, but from a different perspective by one boy, makes a transformation for all of the observers. And even the teachers, they were reacting like this. Okay, this becomes very powerful because you can actually see this object with different eyes. That's why I think visual thinking strategies is a very powerful tool to use. In connection to what I want to do now in my present research with plants is that I want to raise the question, can we use this tool as well when we look at plants or a group of plants or one single plant or a piece of a border in a botanic garden? What kind of reactions does that provoke, and how does the discussion go then? So part of my coming research project will be videotaping groups of students that have this conversation with an educator according to VTS rules, and then gather data that we can analyze and see what kind of relationships are already established with plants by the students, and how do they influence each other through this conversation. Well, it's still relevant. I mean, the method was developed in the 80s, and I think it's relevant now because we are so used to fast looking. If you think at all our mobile devices, not only children but even adults, just swiping the pictures further. So we need a method for slow looking, and this is a method that actually invites for that. Having 25 minutes of collective concentration, attention on one object, and hearing different perspectives on that same object seems like a different way of approaching looking at pictures than what we are used to right now.